History Within Propaganda by Kristen F. Microcampus is a Shanghai American School program which allows 14 8th grade students to venture from their home bubble of Shanghai to a rural village in Yunnan province located at southwest China called Xizhou. On November 22nd to December 19th, Jailbreak became the 10th microcampus group to journey to their new home of 4 weeks. Over the course of the next few weeks, each student chose a topic of interest connected to one aspect of Xizhou to analyze and research deeper through interviews with local contacts, called the Inquiry Project. For my project, I was immediately curious about the propaganda messages in Xizhou. Propaganda messages have always interested me because of how powerful the messages can be and how easily they can sway public opinions. When I got to Xizhou 4 weeks later, I was surprised by the amount of propaganda messages around town. I saw hundreds of different propaganda painted onto the walls. Each one told a different story and had a different meaning, all of which were fascinating. The propaganda messages ranged from new to old, going back through history and time. Finally, I decided to focus my project on 3 messages, each created during a turning point in China's history. My final thesis was, in order for one to understand the propaganda messages in Xizhou, one must consider the meaning of the words, the conditions in which it was written, and the main purpose. Outlined below are some key events of Chinese history that I will be focusing on. Let us first start off in 1949, when the Chinese Civil War ended and the Chinese Communist Party founded the People's Republic of China, otherwise known as Liberation. As Mr. Duan, a former government official, told me, the meaning of the propaganda is 万岁不忘毛主席. The translation of that would be never forget Chairman Mao forever. During that time, the citizens of China had just come out of a chaotic century and were hoping for stability and security, something that Mao seemed to have in abundance. The Chinese Civil War had just ended with a span of 23 years, ending finally when the Kuomintang retreated to the island of Taiwan. Mr. Yin, a shop owner, elaborated more on why China respected Mao Zedong so much, giving me the analogy of money during modern times. Everyone needs and likes money, just like in olden times, but with Mao Zedong portraying as the money. However, I found out many people still respected Mao Zedong today, such as with Mr. Yang, the antique dealer at Sifengjie, who collected many propaganda messages with Mao's sayings. Similar propaganda can be found in Xizhou, said many of my sources, such as Mr. Zhao, the security guard at Yangzhouran. With this propaganda, it is important to understand that this was written during a time of hope, as a new country was formed under the ruling of Chairman Mao. The purpose was essentially to embed trust that Mao Zedong would lead China to a bright future into every citizen of Xizhou, an important fixation for Mao's rule at that time. Moving on, the next huge event on our timeline was one that would result in horrific ways, the Great Leap Forward. This propaganda, called the Harvest Lady, does not contain any words, just a powerful drawing. It depicts a young woman harvesting the crops of that year. In her hands, she is carrying what looks like a basket full of vegetables, while on the right of her lay numerous bags of grain. In front of her are 2 bottles of drinks and some potatoes or other types of round food. The young lady appears to have a smile on her face, happy with the outcome of the harvest. The Great Leap Forward from 1958 to 1961 was a disastrous event in Chinese history. Mao was convinced that China would be able to boost the economy so that by 1988 it will have an economy near to one of the United States. Most of the propaganda during that time was about boosting crop productions, harvesting, and making more food, according to Mr. Yang, the local antique dealer. However, Mao's great plan backfired in horrific ways. Millions of people died during those 3 years because of starvation and hunger. Mr. Duan gave me some insight on what Xizhou was like during the Great Leap Forward. He told me that everyone did everything together, as that was promoted. One village would only have one portion of food to eat together, which was never enough for everyone. As shown by the gaping holes in the Harvest Lady propaganda, most propaganda during the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution have been destroyed or faded off because the messages conveyed bad ideas, shared Mr. Zhang, the security guard at the Linden Center. During the Great Leap Forward, the citizens of China were suffering from hunger and starvation. However, the Harvest Lady was an idealized version of what the Great Leap Forward was supposed to be like. The propaganda was placed right outside of what used to be a food warehouse. The Harvest Lady is quite ironic because all of China was starving during the Great Leap Forward, but the propaganda portrays a healthy, smiling lady harvesting all the bountiful crops. We are now approaching more modern times. Moving from the Great Leap Forward, reform and opening was a huge event that occurred right after the Cultural Revolution. During these times, propaganda messages have changed drastically. This propaganda is quite new, as shown through the block format of the characters compared to the more handwritten format of the older ones. The first half of the message, 计划生育利国利民, translates to plan birth for the good of the country and its people, while the second half, 讲优绵不温暖人心, means reward the good in order to restore the warmth in people's hearts. Mao Zedong died in 1976. Not long after, Deng Xiaoping came into power and immediately started transforming China's economic state. China started opening up to foreign countries, which created numerous new possibilities. Not only that, foreign trade began to increase in China under Deng Xiaoping's rule. Here in Xizhou, Mr. Ma, an antique shop owner, talked about how Deng Xiaoping helped China transform and how his shop would not be here without reform and opening. Xizhou's tourism development would not have been possible without reform and opening, and foreign tourists would definitely not be enjoying what the village has to offer if the event did not occur. In 1979, the one-child policy came into play in China. This policy restricted families to only give birth to one child or face fines. Mr. Zhang, the Linden Center security guard, is one person who has abided by the rule. He has only one daughter due to this policy, but completely supports the one-child policy. As said before, this propaganda is a recent addition to the walls of Xizhou. It provides a reward type of situation. Like if you follow the one-child policy, you will be rewarded for obeying it. This may be a strategy they use to help encourage people to follow the policy. Young married couples are the target audience for this propaganda, as they are the ones who have the most say in whether or not to follow it. Now that we have gone through these propaganda messages from 3 turning points in New China's history, it is clear propagandas at each historical period is different from one another, according to society's needs. However, we only understand the propaganda message because we have gone through the meaning, condition, and main purpose of each one. Microcampus has taught me to communicate more openly with others through my interviews with the sources. It has taught me that wherever I go, there will always be special experiences and new connections to make. Microcampus forced me to get out of my comfort zone, my bubble, to make the most out of the limited time I have. Thank you to all the sources I interviewed throughout my trip here. They gave me so much insight on the propaganda messages and what Xizhou was like during the events mentioned. I have made so many amazing connections through these interviews. Thank you to the Linden Center for allowing us to stay at Yangzhouran and being supportive of our journey. Thank you to Evie for helping me translate as well as coming with me to my interviews. Thank you to Miss Mai for watching our health and making sure we stay on top of our work. Thank you to Mr. T for helping all 14 of us through the process and teaching us to discipline ourselves. Finally, thank you to the wonderful village of Shizhou for allowing us to call this beautiful place home for 4 amazing weeks.